I call this special meeting of the Belmont-Redwood Shores School Board to order at 7:02 p.m. Could everyone please stand for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we are recording tonight's board meeting. There was no other session before this, so there are no announcements. Next item is speakers wishing to address the board. Ms. Ellinger, are there any requests for public comment?
President Northup, no, there are not.
Thank you, Ms. Ellinger. And then we'll move on to the main part of our session, the school board information session. So just for anybody listening at home, what we're going to do is we're going to go through some board roles and responsibilities that Superintendent DeGuara is going to take us through. And then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A with the board members. So Superintendent DeGuara.
Great. Good evening, board, and all those in our audience that are watching or listening to this video after the fact. A lot of questions typically come up about what does a school board do and what is the role of a school board. School board plays a really important role in setting the direction for our school district. The California School Boards Association is really the statewide association that kind of governs school board work and supports school boards in their endeavor. And they've actually defined the board roles and responsibilities as 5 specific ones. I'm not going to read all of the elements of each slide, but just some highlights to give kind of an overview. CSBA defines the first goal of a school board is setting the direction for schools. So our board of trustees sets the direction by adopting policies, vision and mission statements, strategic planning and strategic thinking. Recently, we just adopted our strategic plan at the end of last year and implemented that this year. The second role and responsibility is establishing effective and efficient structures, looking at budget allocations, making sure that those are aligned to achieve our mission goals and our priorities, establishing direction for the school district, and really setting a positive overall school climate. The third item is providing support. School boards are links to the community. They advocate not for just one school or one district trustee area, but they advocate for the entire district. They're essential in modeling positive work environments, positive interactions, and work and support of our district moving forward to build trust. The fourth role of the school board is ensuring accountability, to monitoring progress, making sure that our students are headed in the right direction, achieving academic goals as well as the goals that we set, and monitoring the process through important documents like LCAP and budget approval. They set the appropriate educational environment, making sure that we're all working in one direction. And finally, the board has one employee, that is the superintendent. So the board selects, evaluates, and works closely with the superintendent to ensure that our district is headed in the right direction. And finally, fifth role and responsibility, and probably the most important, the board provides community leadership that advocates for children and school district and public schools. The board's primary focus is to advocate for children in the district programs, making sure that we are leaders locally and across the state. CSBA has a really nice graphic that helps kind of delineate the governance role between how boards operate and how school district administrators work within their capacities. We are a governance team. As a governance team, we set the beliefs, the vision, the mission, policies, and priorities. And then I take that work And I work with our administration, with our staff, with our teachers to develop action plans so that we can move that work forward and reach our goal. And then finally, before we jump in, I do want to mention, as I mentioned, California School Boards Association, or CSBA. They are invested in ensuring that school boards have all the information they need to make timely and appropriate decisions. So part of the work of a school board member is being active within CSBA. We do our best to support the California School Board's annual education conference, and that is coming up in December 5th through the 7th. So ideally, whoever's entering into the school board in November for one of our 2 positions available will have the opportunity to attend that conference. We encourage anybody who's thinking of running to mark that in their calendars. It is a district supported expense.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent DeGuara. So fellow trustees, we'll just go through these questions. And again, for the benefit of the audience, you'll see that if you're looking at the slides, that a couple of us are going to take the lead on certain questions. So the first one is just, what do you find most rewarding about serving on the school board? And I'll start with Vice President Bruno.
Be looking anywhere, just simplest being service, right? Like kind of giving back to the community is really easy to think about schools being a good location to serve the present and the future. I'm a parent, so I get to feel like a closer tie that I can feed and clothe and shelter my kids, and also feel like I'm doing a little bit more for just those direct ones, and also again back to giving back of like also outside of them of the other 682 kids at that site, and now the other 4,000. So feeling like I'm doing more than just serving those my 2 little ones. And I honestly I think I'm growing as a professional, as a human, in doing the work, learning a lot all the time. And
Thank you, Trustee Bruno. Trustee Koss, what do you find most rewarding about serving on the school board?
Okay, so you said most, so I got 5 things, but I'll pick one of them. I think for me, it was in service of the students for the larger district. It was nice when my kids were in kindergarten to get involved and take some steps within the Nesbitt community, serve on the PTA, help do events there, and then move into school site council. But I enjoyed that strategic part of it at the school site, and I wanted to kind of get engaged in helping think through the strategic direction of the entire district community and support them. And I felt that what I find rewarding is it kind of is a good fit for my background, and I just thought that I could lend a perspective that maybe wasn't being heard, or even if it was being heard, that I could advocate on behalf of others. So I like the advocacy piece. I really like the setting the strategic direction and being involved at that macro high level perspective.
Thank you, Trustee Koss. Trustee Leinbach?
Thank you. My comments are similar. Over a decade ago, when my daughter started kindergarten in the district, I didn't know a lot about what school system was, except for when I was a kid, which things have changed quite a bit since then, obviously. But getting involved, it's first about, or being in the school is like, okay, what do I have to do to prepare my child to move forward? And then I started volunteering with PTA. And then I learned it's like, okay, let's help the whole class go on a field trip or something. And then I, became an executive member on the PTA, and then I joined the School Force Ed Foundation. And as I made this journey towards more and a larger volunteering roles, I discovered that it's not just about my child. It's not just about my child's class. It's about each and every child. And each and every child has different needs. And many of them are underserved if they are struggling with one thing or another. And those are the children we have to look out for more. And the most rewarding thing for me is making sure each and every child has what they need to succeed and become a valued citizen of our community as they become an adult. So making sure that all children are served in an equitable fashion is rewarding to me, and helping to make sure that happens is one of my key mantras to do.
Thank you, trustee Linebaugh. Trustee Howard?
The in-person interaction with the public, probably. No. Nobody's here. So I would have said that one of the most rewarding things beyond what has already been said is seeing years of work come to fruition. So it takes a long time and a lot of effort to make positive change in an organization like this. And you're doing it in the service of school age kids and their future. And projects that you hear us voting on and sort of the back end of what we're deciding and presenting. It's been not just months in the works, but usually years in the works. We've done a lot of amazing things on this particular board. Everybody was kind of in the same grouping, but Sam and I joined the board when we had to replace our superintendent and a good portion of our cabinet. That was the big surprise. But there was one more big surprise, the worldwide pandemic and shutting down schools and then reopening them in some fashion or another. And beyond that, we started off in sort of a perma crisis mode, and amazingly, we're still able to keep our finger on the pulse of what was important, which is really always focusing on student achievement. And since then, we've really been able to grow the district in an organizational way that has helped thousands of kids through this essential developmental year. And we've been able to refocus some of our resources where they're needed most. And I think that has been highly rewarding. The implementation of a vision that starts usually on a whiteboard somewhere has been very rewarding. And frankly, the interaction with my colleagues on the board has been extremely rewarding. Pepper Koss, I never liked that guy. Beyond that,
Damn it, Howard.
yeah, exactly. Beyond that, I think there's lots of parts about the school board that are incredibly rewarding, and serving your public is almost always rewarding. Even when people are angry with you, they're angry with you because they're passionate about their kids, and we're passionate about their kids, and we're all trying to do the right thing. And so that has been very eye-opening and sort of, generally speaking, a great experience.
Thank you, trustee Howard. And then for myself, again, just to echo my colleagues' comments, started off getting involved very locally, but also for increasing funding for the school district. And I moved into the district from out of state, and I just knew that I was so grateful that every school in the district was an amazing school, and that I wanted each school to continue being an amazing school, regardless of which school my children attended. And then, being on the board, I do love that interaction with the community, being able to see community members, right? We don't have a ton of local media that are covering what we're doing. So a lot of times we're the publicists for what we're doing. So I love being able to tell community members, we're working on the strategic plan, we're working on the facilities master plan, and just answer their questions from anything they've heard about in education in general. So next question, this will start off with Sam and then Jackie. How much time is typically required each week for board duties, including meetings, preparation, and other responsibilities? Trustee Linebaugh.
Thank you. So as part of a board member, it goes through a monthly cycle typically. July is our free month, so we get a little summer vacation ourselves. But typically the time from a personal level that I've been spending, of course, once a month and third Thursdays, we'll have our board meeting from 5 till 9 or later, depending on how full the agenda is. And so that's 4 hours there. Of course, we all need to prepare for that meeting. We need to be well versed and understand all the material that's coming before us so that we can make informed decisions on that. That means reading through the board materials that Ms. Ellinger always diligently prepares for us. And also communicating with Superintendent DeGara. Any questions that we have, we can always reach out to the superintendent, get more clarification, make sure we fully understand it. And thanks for Superintendent DeGara for providing information very timely on that. So that's at least 4 hours in that preparation, but it's usually more depending on what issues are on hand. And then beyond that, there's just regular communications with the superintendent on issues as they come up. We get weekly updates. We'll read through those. And if there's any questions, we can always converse with superintendent. And notice I never mentioned I'm communicating with my fellow trustees because the Brown Act, which we won't go into too much today, but of course, we want to have everything be transparent so that the whole community knows what the board is deliberating on. We never deliberate outside of this meeting, outside of a open session. And then finally, the time I spend a fair amount of time with community events. I like to go, to stay in touch with the community, see what's happening, get feedback from the community, attend PTA meetings or school events or other things. Graduation's coming up. I'm looking forward to attending some of those. And it's always good to see student achievement in action.
Thank you, Trustee Lineback. Trustee Bruno?
You say a total?
Everything.
I was curious if my hours per month estimation was gonna match yours. I agree with all of that in the sense of the preparation. I would say as a newer board member, I spend a chunk of time rereading things. Not necessarily, I mean, the preparing for the meetings, I think obviously is a lot of time, but even the board updates or facilities, bond measures, things where I'm like, what actually is this? I think in a month I lose some hours there of just like a second time and before I even ask questions. And I will say like I don't know that I attend as many events, but I think the intent is there and they're still got a span of a month time put in. But as I put out numbers, but I think 20 to 30 hours a month after with the meetings and driving time of being present, on top of the weekly updates. Let's put a number to it.
Thank you.
With you on that.
Thank you, Trustee Bruno. Next question, how does the board interact with the superintendent and other administrators? And I'll start that off and then pass it over to Trustee Howard. So as Superintendent DeGuara mentioned in his overview of the roles and responsibilities, the superintendent is the only employee of the school board. So most of our interactions are with Superintendent DeGuara. And it's a great relationship, great interactions. The superintendent plus the school board, we are the governance team and we set the vision and the mission for the district. And then again, as my colleagues mentioned, Superintendent DeGuara provides us with a weekly update. And then we can ask any questions about that. Superintendent DeGuara has also been great at meeting with us individually, one-on-one in preparation for the board meetings. And again, as my colleague said, our work is done during the board meeting. We need to prepare for the board meeting, which Superintendent DeGuara and Ms. Ellinger and the rest of the cabinet work diligently on, and then we discuss and make decisions at the board meeting. So I'll pass it on to Trustee Howard for additional commentary.
That's not good.
mean, how does the board interact with the superintendent and other administrators? With an iron fist? And, so, I guess I would say one of the things that's true about my relationship with, Dan, is that, we talk often. I would say I would spend at least an hour, if not more, and sometimes several hours a week talking to Dan on the phone to understand where something's at, or inform him of something that's happening, or get his take on something, or reflect back on an issue that we're working through. And so we spend a lot of time talking, and even more so depending on what your role is. So when I'm in the general trustee role, perhaps less interaction because other folks are taking the mantle in terms of leadership. When I was the president, 5-6 hours a week on the phone probably, and a lot of that driving back and forth to work. Dan said he knew my work schedule very well because he was going to get a phone call either early in the morning or late at night. So with the other administrators, principals, I guess, or are you talking about cabinet? Both.
Both.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our designated schools that we're looking out for. This year, I think I know my two are Redwood Shores and Sandpiper, and I try to make sure that those folks feel heard, and just a quick check-in, but it's always above board. There's no check-in that happens that I don't tell the superintendent about. There's no interaction that is under the cover, so to speak. And if I'm going to meet with one of the cabinet members, it's the same thing. Dan's going to know that meeting's happening. In other words, there's transparency. And sometimes people are communicating through me to interact with Dan to let him know that something's going on, and that's fine. The other pieces of just making sure that the administrators and the cabinet members feel like they have an issue that is clear to us, like there's a space for that. And but again, it's not one where I'm confirming that Superintendent Dubois is doing his job or the district is doing their job. It's more like, how are things going? Do you guys have any hot button issues that you need us to be aware of? The district has a lot of things on its plate. And so, having additional eyes and ears out there can be very helpful to make sure that the flow of important issues are not getting missed.
Thank you, Trustee Howard. The next question, David will start off. How are decisions made within the board? Is it generally through consensus voting or another method?
It's usually through Rochambeau. Just kidding. So decisions are made publicly. Everything is public at our board meetings or our board retreats, which is interesting because we don't know what the other board members feel on a subject until it becomes an agenda item. The actual we take each equal turns, as you might know if you listened in on a meeting, with equal turns discussing the agenda item at the moment. And I really find that that is one of my most favorite parts, because I love hearing what my fellow board members think on a topic. And very often they'll surface a question or an area where I go, that's interesting. Or I might come in with a different thought and their line of inquiry might change my thought on the topic that's the agenda item. But it'll always be an agenda item, and if any decisions are made, it's always at the public meetings. It's always through a vote. And so, but I think collectively, coming from those different perspectives that we bring and the different backgrounds, I think we are able to flush out all the relevant issues. And really, I feel very fortunate that this board is very synergistic, and we're very lucky compared to some of the other conversations that I've had with other school board members throughout the state of California, that we do kind of collectively value what each other says and kind of bring everything to the surface. I do believe that we've had a lot or all 5-0 unanimous decisions during my tenure here, but that doesn't mean that I want to emphasize that doesn't mean that we have to agree 100% with each other. In fact, I think we do a disservice to the kids and the district if we don't have a vigorous debate and constructive discussion. I think at the end that serves the district and our kids' interests the best to kind of, again, bring forth these issues. I think it's very important we evaluate what's been presented and then think about what's in the best interest of the district. I believe that none of us are in the position to rubber stamp something. And so we each individually and collectively put a lot of time, deliberation, and reflection. And therefore, I would definitely agree with what Sam was saying about getting the presentation ahead of time. District leadership, Superintendent DeGuara really does a great job in helping us prepare to the best of our ability, so that the information is there on relevant issues so that we can ask the relevant questions. And so we do through weekly board updates, board meeting material in advance to study, prepare ourselves. And so it is through voting. It's not always needs to be consensus, of course, right? And I think that's what brings up the interesting discussion points.
Thank you, Trustee Coss. And yeah, agree with everything you said. Just would add exactly, I think we strive for consensus as much as possible. And I think, right, we're all here for the kids and for the improvement of their education. So if we do disagree on something, it's probably a minor issue and we can have agreement on the larger issues. So yeah, I would agree that we generally strive for consensus and appreciate the recommendations that Superintendent DeGuara and his staff bring to us. And then yes, that we do vote on things. So I believe we have had everything has been unanimous. But as Trustee Coss said, it doesn't have to be that way. If we ever did have something where we're not unanimous, one of the things I especially like when I was considering joining the board that veteran board members, when I was considering running, that veteran board members let me know, as I said, even if, you know, the vote goes away, you don't want it to go, you have to support the board's decision overall. And I think that's spot on. So exactly, whatever we decide, that is the decision of the district, and then we move on. And of course, there's so many issues to tackle and so many important things to consider. Segue into what are the current major issues or challenges facing the board and the school district. And we're going to start with Trustee Howard and then Trustee Bruno and then Superintendent DeGuara.
I think it breaks down into assessment, implementation of issues that have been put upon us by the state, and then funding, and then I would say leadership. So what I mean by that is we're going through a process of assessing the needs of the district at this time. And what I mean by that is not the human resources, but the physical plant resources that are either aging or need upgrading or updating. What I mean by implementation is that there's a state mandate for universal TK, and that is slowly but surely ramping up as the next few years come along. And of course, you have to have those classrooms ready for TKs, and TK kids have special needs that are not the same as a sixth grader. They have toiletry needs and classroom size needs and et cetera, et cetera. So we're working on that implementation process. The funding has to come from somewhere. And again, it's a state mandate for some of these things. And also we have to consider whether or not the district or our voters within our district are ready to support these measures as they come online. So we're always worried about funding to a certain extent and urgency of some of these things. We're a little bit more worried about some of them than others. And then leadership. We have two wizened souls that are about to exit their term, and the first time that we are moving towards by district elections, and so we need to recruit people with vision, people with patience, people with various characteristics that would suit them as a school board trustee, but they have to be within a certain anatomic region or geographic region of the area. So that's a new challenge for us. It's a challenge that we are taking on with some zeal. And this is the point of tonight also to recruit some people. But I think that those are the major things facing us at this moment. There's always some crazy thing that shows up and happens, but those are our bigger issues probably.
Thank you, Trustee Howard. Trustee Bruno?
Yeah, like some of the list without any kind of major additions. I think keeping our I think it's really easy, right, to stay here for the kids, but I think keeping our staff at all levels kind of happy and growing, so PD and new salary, things like that. Student services in general, I think specifically the staffing there is like the thing that will be all districts having a thing, but just being able to find people to serve our students with needs. Of course, kind of upcoming growth with TK expansion. Leadership is admission, and natural to bond measures, things like that, which I think are just kind of necessarily time-based, like I would call it a major issue, was the current one. Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Bruno. Superintendent DeGuara.
Yeah, I think you all hit on the major ones. I think always, our students are our core. And sometimes as a board, we are looking at facilities master planning, or we're looking at bond, which tend to be kind of not on the surface students focused, but when you translate that into what it means to learn in a clean, well-lit environment, or what it means to have additional funding for those enrichment type activities, that has a definite impact on our students. So really managing those systems and being nimble enough to be able to respond to the newest legislation, how things change, new requirements that come up, universal meals, those kinds of things, while keeping the center our students. I'll also piggyback, the upcoming board elections. Out of a 5-member board, we'll have 2 members transitioning, and we'll be welcoming 2 members. In a board of 5, as Trustee Howard shared earlier, a lot of the things that we have in motion have been moving forward over several years across several different school boards. So ensuring that we have people that step onto our school board for the right reasons to serve the students of the district, and come along with that dynamic as our folks have seen. Like, we work really hard. We do lots of work. There's lots of prep. But I think our folks watching this know that we have some fun while we're doing it. We can joke, jest with each other, and really nice dynamic. And when that dynamic is present on a school board level, it's really present throughout the system. So those would be the things I would say.
Thank you, Superintendent DeGuara. And then the next question is for Trustee Leinbach and Trustee Koss. What advice would you give to someone considering joining the school board? Or another take that you could answer this with is, what do you know now that you wish you had known before?
Interesting. Well, first of all, I thank anyone who's considering taking this position. It's a very important decision. So some of the advice I give is, first of all, understand what a governing team is. And basically what a governing team is a policy setting body. We're not here to micromanage how things are going to happen and what's going to happen, what time of day the school's going to start. We're a policy making body. So it's good to understand that. We're also stewards of the district where in this country, we live in a democracy where it's all about citizen oversight. So we are the citizen oversight over a government body that's running the schools. So that's what our role is to provide the constituents that vote the trustees in their voice on a government organization. Also on a more different level is to have an even temperament. It's really important that you can be ready to field some very strong opinions. After going through the pandemic, there were a lot of very strong opinions, and you have to be ready to take all those and also not take them personally, of course. It's very important to be a good listener at that point. Any comment that comes in, you have to listen to it with an open mind and empathize with the person's perspective, no matter how emotional they may be at the time. That's their opinion, that's their perspective, and each one should be respected equally. Also, I recommend being very active in the school community. That's how you know what's going on by, being active. It's tough to really understand things without being at events and talking to folks. That's both parents and families, including students, the staff, administrators, just getting opinions from even people who are not part of the district, maybe businesses around the community, they have an input on things as well as maybe traffic concerns or other things. So it's good listening to everyone and being active in the community. And another thing I'd advise is once you join the board, most board members have one or more students in the district. When you join, you have to disconnect your loyalty to that one or two schools because you'll be representing the entire district, and you want to treat every school with the same amount of attention. And finally, use an equitable lens when approaching decisions. Make sure that each and every student is represented. I mentioned that. That's my advice.
Thank you, Trustee Linebaugh. And then Trustee Koss, just to add the additional part, what advice would you give to someone considering, or what do you know now that you wish you had known before?
Yeah, Trustee Linebaugh said some really good things. I think especially with by district elections, right, when we have at least one school site, maybe the home site where our kids go, most likely. You have to remember that you are representing the entire district and the entire community. So I would say continue, part of the fun for me has been getting to know the other school sites, going to the community events, seeing how the district programs are maybe different, what they're implementing. There's enterprise-wide district programs, but then maybe there's site-specific nuances. And I think that's really fun. So I would say that if you're somebody who's kind of passionate about continuing to learn, ask questions. One of the things I didn't realize was honestly just how much the district does. And for me, I wanted to get really kind of up to speed on the special education programming. And so I love the idea. What we do is when we get assigned committees and we have some say in it. And so without opening doors, I really have valued that because they help all the sites and I'm not just school specific. And so that was really important. Also getting an idea of special education program, especially as, there's a continuing need for that as well as mental health resources. So, I wanted to make sure that if this was going to be an emerging or a growing trend, that I wanted to understand it. So I think continue to learn, ask questions. And then I also think that kind of knowing which is something I'm still feeling out, is know what the role is and what it isn't. I think that chart was a very good thing where we as the board members set direction and have a say in strategic direction, right? There's strategy and direction of the district. The tactical, so we're doing the what. The tactical, the how, is done by district leadership. And I think sometimes you could get sucked in to, especially if you have an education background, as some of us do, to kind of say, whoa, did you try this? We're not here to micromanage. They have enough on their plate. They don't need us to micromanage. We are setting the overall governance and direction and asking the questions from when then the district leadership goes to implement. So the tactical and operational how is not in our lane. And I guess the last thing is just kind of do it. Obviously, I think we know what your why is. We always talk about the why you're running and make sure that it's in service of kids versus like personal ambitions. And I don't think that, but what I mean by that also is when we started out with the PTA, it's individual events, and it might be a month ahead, but that's your time frame. And some of them can be quite time intensive for those periods of time. This is an ongoing year commitment. And I think it's really important to honestly think to yourself, it's exceptionally rewarding. But it's a time commitment, as we've talked about. And it's a yearly time commitment, and it's just doesn't roll off where you can take a break. And so I think it's really important to have the support structure in place. I didn't let Karen know that I was running until I was well into it and signed up. I didn't want to have that conversation, but no, I'm just kind of told her at the But I do think you need to kind of think about, at certain key times, do you have that support structure so that you can take advantage of going to the community events? Because I do think representing the community and hearing what their diverse needs are so that you could be their advocate is one of the greatest jobs and roles that we have, is advocacy on behalf of our community. And I think the more that you can touch base with community members, even if you're hearing things, that maybe is a little bit on the negative or just, I think overall their intent is positive, and you should then bring that back to let the district know, and also communicate from the district outwards to the community. So I don't know. I think that's just a bunch of things to keep in mind as you. But overall, I would say please reach out to all of us because it's extremely rewarding, and if you have the time, it's a great volunteer position to be part of.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Cost. And then the last question, what 3 adjectives would you use to describe an effective school board member? And we'll start with Trustee Howard, and then Trustee Linebaugh, Trustee Cost, Trustee Bruno.
Always a mistake. I have 4, and I would have said curious, thoughtful, observant, and open-minded.
Thank you, Trustee Howard. Trustee Linebaugh.
I listed 3, but I'm gonna add a 4th just to be fun. First one is focused. And when I say focused, I mean focused on student achievement. Anytime you get distracted with anything but student achievement, it's not the best value of time for the district. Everything should revolve around that. The other 2 trustees should be unbiased. I think that goes without saying. Listen to all opinions equally. And the third one is collaborative, both with on the board and with the community. And the 4th one we'll add is the trustee should be humorous. And it's always been a pleasure with Trustee Howard, adding a little bit of humor. It makes it a lot more fun. So we are a group that works very well together, and I appreciate all my trustees.
I'll have you know, the Cost said at one point, it took me a while to figure out you were joking.
See that?
Thank you, Trustee Linebaugh. Trustee Cost?
I would say the biggest thing is empathy, and yes, empathy for the kids, but I also think it's for the community, so that when they will grab you at certain times, whether you're ready or not. And I think it's to have that empathy where you're a listener, you're an active listener, you're getting engaged, and so therefore you can be their advocate, but you're not necessarily it might be a district-wide decision that might not agree with the school site, but it's really important to make sure that you're hearing them, and that you have empathy, even if the decision making might not be school site specific. So the other one is flexibility. As a school board member, you should not be entrenched in a viewpoint. Be open, so that's kind of piggybacks to being a collaborator. Assume positive intent from your other board members. And again, that flexibility to be open to other points of view that maybe you haven't considered.
Thank you, trustee Goss. Trustee Bruno.
I had a bunch, and I just ticked off the ones they repeated. So, engaged. Thank you, Kevin, all the ways in the conversation outside the community. I think authentic, like I think we were kind of chosen for who we are, and we should like keep that in mind. And like dedicated kind of continuously. So like kind of reminding ourselves this is what we're here for. Maybe this takes that time, but like kind of like re-upping a commitment constantly.
Thank you, trustee Bruno, sorry. Yeah, I just to borrow from my colleagues, everything you've all said, I think the empathetic, open, and dedicated. Yeah, definitely. So I think that we do have some more information. We do have some more information, and we were hoping that there would be some people in the audience, but we do not see any.
That's okay. I do know that we have a small contingent watching online. So that's a good thing. And I just want to share that as superintendent working with the governance team, it's actually a nice reflection to hear for me to hear you talk about your roles. And I just extend my thanks. I think you all show all the values that you described pretty well. So thank you for that. A couple of slides. I just want informational pieces for those watching. We did transition to by trustee election. All of our current board members were voted at large. So as we go through this transition, we'll be electing from specific areas of the district. In 2024, we'll be electing from areas 2 and area 4. Area 2 is what I have been calling the bow tie area of the school district, kind of right in the middle there. Area 4 represents the vast majority of Redwood Shores. So areas 2 and 4 in 2024 November, and areas 1, 3, and 5 in November of 26. I will just share, one of you was mentioning kind of that yearly commitment. Running for board is a 4-year commitment. So just kind of keeping that in mind as we go along. There's a link in the presentation that you can check the location of your residence wherever you're registered to vote. You have to be within one of those 2 areas. I will say, do be a little patient with that website. It's transitioning over to registrar of voters and all that good stuff. But you do have to put in your address, city, state, zip, and its
Social security number.
Almost. And if you have any questions, by all means, reach out to us. The San Mateo County Registrar of Voters, San Mateo County Registration and Elections Division really facilitates all of this. There's a great article, the 10 things you need to know for running for office. It is a formal office. It's not just, it's unlike PTA or school site council. School site council is locally elected, PTA locally elected. This one actually is elected just like you can elect any other government position. This person will actually potentially be on the presidential ballot in November of 24. So there are some specific criteria that you need to go through. I've highlighted a couple of them here. One is making sure that you're in the right area and that you're qualified to run for office. The second one is there's specific filing periods It is 113, opens 113 days before Election Day, which by my calculation and Google's calculation is July 15th, and closes 88 days before Election Day, which by our calculation is August 9th. Please don't take those dates by my word, but Registrar of Voters and Elections Office has the definitive date. So please double check that. Don't wait until the last minute in case there's anything goes awry or the I's aren't dotted or the T's aren't crossed in your application and whatnot. You want to make sure you have time to amend that. And then on the last slide, there's some resources. These have been in all of our publications. CSBA, California School Boards Association, talks about roles and responsibilities, talks about leadership. If you're interested in all the transparency things that the board was mentioning, Brown Act, that's what it's all called. And don't worry, you'll learn about that in your board training once you get started. There's also, again, the 10 things you need to know. Offices on Tower Road, just close here to the district office. And then I do want to encourage anybody who's considering running, please reach out to me directly via email. I'm happy to schedule time to coffee, answer any questions that you may have as it is really an important role. Sam?
And I'd add to that, feel free to reach out to any of the trustees that are currently on the, be happy to, other than this televised version of more personal discussion. Yeah.
Super.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent DeGuara. And we're almost done. So just Superintendent DeGuara and my fellow trustees, do you have any closing comments before we adjourn? And that was not part of the agenda, so if there is nothing, that is fine. But anything you wanted to add that we didn't get to during the questions?
Join me.
No, thanks for considering the position and look forward to talking to you further.
Thank you. And then just wanted to piggyback on what Superintendent DeGuara said. Before the 22 election, I know that Dan met with myself and the other candidates, and that was so helpful to help us know what the role was going into it, and then to help us be prepared to take office. So again, highly just recommend that everyone reach out to Superintendent DeGuara if you're interested, and again to the fellow board members as well. All right. Thank you. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Trustee Bruno moves that we adjourn, seconded by David Koss. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. This meeting is adjourned. This meeting is